In this video, we are talking about 10 big name players that you need to either buy, sell, or hold in fantasy football, and if we're pressing the panic button or not, along with my biggest buy low right now that will be revealed at the end of the video. But before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video. Starting at number 10 with Garrett Wilson. Yes, it's been frustrating being a Wilson owner. You're just waiting for that big blow-up game. There's no more excuses. Aaron Rodgers is under center. Zach Wilson is gone. You spent a late first or early second round pick to get him. You're expecting more. But there are reasons to be encouraged as Garrett finally got into the end zone in week 3. And you have to understand the context of the situation. Opposing defenses, their main priority, main goal is to take away Garrett Wilson in the passing game. Because right now they don't really have anyone else. Allen Lazard is just a guy. Mike Williams is a nice player, but he's coming off that torn ACL. He's not up to full speed yet. I do think once Mike Williams continues to get healthier, it will be more difficult to double team Garrett Wilson because we know Mike Williams, deep play threat. He's a big 6'4" wide receiver. I think he's going to pair very nicely with Aaron Rodgers. And on top of that, Rodgers looks phenomenal. He looks like vintage Aaron Rodgers out there. Yes, he looked rusty in week 1, but all that rust is already gone. And in week 3, he looked incredible, even at age 40. If you told me that Aaron Rodgers looked horrible right now, he looked cooked, he looked slow, he looked hesitant, rusty, coming off that injury, then I wouldn't be as excited about Garrett Wilson. But Aaron Rodgers looks like the Aaron Rodgers that we all have come to love. He looks great, so that's also really good for Wilson. And Garrett has a 29% target share through the first 3 weeks, so Rodgers is still trying to get him the football, even if he is doubled, even if he is tripled. And this is just going to be a much better offense in New York. They're going to be in scoring position much more often. They're going to be in these high-value situations. I'm not really worried about Garrett Wilson whatsoever, but if the Wilson owner in your league is panicking, he's frustrated because the fantasy points have not come like we thought they would, then buy low on Garrett Wilson because the usage is great. He's on a good offense. Aaron Rodgers looks really good. Like, if I'm a Wilson owner, I am feeling really confident. Hopefully you're not 0-3. If you're 1-2 even, 2-1, 3-0, you're going to be fine. So if he's not on your team, get him on your roster now. And if he is, everything will be all right. The big games are coming. At number 9, Travis Kelce. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I was out on Travis Kelce this offseason at cost. I didn't think it was going to be this bad, I'll be honest with you. It's pretty bad. I mean, 15% target share so far in the year. He saw a season-high 5 targets last week. Season-high 5 targets. Travis Kelce. I think this is a product of a couple of things. Rashee Rice is just the better option in the passing game at this point. He's a really good receiver. Kelce has lost another step. He's going to be 35 years old soon. Opposing defenses are trying to take away Kelce, as Patrick Mahomes noted in a post-game interview. And maybe Kansas City's trying to preserve Travis for a deep playoff run, for a shot at a three-peat. I don't really know. Like, is Travis just not getting open like he used to? If he's being doubled or triple teamed, it's kind of hard to get open, but they're not doubling him on every single play, right? So something's going on. I think it's a mixture of all the things above that I just explained. But whatever's happening, it's not good, considering you probably spent a round 3, round 4 pick to get him. I mean, to be fair, the tight end landscape right now is embarrassing. It's atrocious. Like, all the studs are not performing. Like, it's been a disaster. So it's kind of tricky here because I have Kelce listed as a sell, but how are you really going to sell him right now considering he hasn't done anything? No one wants Travis Kelce unless someone is betting on the name value, betting on him being attached to Patrick Mahomes. So that very well could be the case. The only way this really works for you, though, is that if you somehow scooped up Brock Bowers late and you have Bowers on your roster, I'd be trying to get rid of Kelce. Maybe wait till he has a solid game and then try to sell him high. But you don't want him on your team. He looks lost out there. He doesn't look a part of the offense. He looks slow, old. Like, it's not good. And while there is still some upside being on a Kansas City offense with Patrick Mahomes, I don't really want him on my team, especially if I can get good value for him in return. At number 8, Bijan Robinson, another guy that you spent a first-round pick on that hasn't really given you those ceiling games that you know Bijan Robinson is capable of, and it just feels like he's had several games already this year where he starts out really hot and then he just disappears. He struggles. Like, I believe in week 2, he had 90 rushing yards or more in the first half against Philadelphia, and he finished with 97. Like, if you're in a league where you get some sort of bonus at 100 yards, like, you're sitting at halftime being like, oh, I have this in the bag. Like, that's a pretty good day if he has 100 rushing yards and a couple catches. But no, this offense still looks a little bit out of sync with Zach Robinson. Like, the end of last week's game where they needed that first down, like, the call was horrible. I know there was reports that Kirk checked out of whatever the call was and audible to that run play to Bijan, but this offense still has shown flashes to be really good when they came back against Philadelphia, but they also still look a little out of sync. Kirk Cousins is still rounding into form. I do have a lot of confidence overall in this offense, in the coaching staff. I really like Kirk Cousins. They have so much talent with Bijan, Drake, Kyle Pitts, so I think it's going to be fine. I think Bijan's going to be fine. And if you look at the advanced metrics, it's screaming RB1. 82% snap share, 65% of the rush attempts, 71% route participation, 16% target share. Like, those are all really good metrics. Not really worried about Tyler Algier. The big games are coming. I know Bijan hasn't run for over 100 yards yet. He only has 1 touchdown, but he's on a good offense. He doesn't have to deal with Desmond Ridder or Arthur Smith anymore. So if you have Bijan, you're holding him. But if you don't have Bijan, I'd be sending a ton of offers to the Robinson owner trying to buy him low now. At number 7, Tyreek Hill. It is an absolute disaster in Miami right now, and it's really unfortunate because there's a lot of talent on this offense that's just being wasted. A lot of fantasy points that just don't exist when Tua's not on the field. Skylar Thompson is a really bad quarterback, and he's dealing with an injury now. Even if he was healthy, he should not be the starter in week 4 because he is just not good at football. The best bet here for the Dolphins is that Tyler Huntley is the QB1 this week. I mean, his resume isn't great. He's not a quarterback that's going to throw for a lot of yards, but maybe he's serviceable enough to keep Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane above water. But the concern here is that Tua's on IR. He cannot come back until at least week 8, and he hasn't even been cleared by doctors to play again. We don't know if he's going to just all of a sudden retire or if he's going to be out for the year. There's just a lot of question marks and a lot of negativity and a lot of downside here that could happen, right? Like, if Tua's ruled out for the year or he won't be activated until week 14 and Miami has 4 wins on the season, like, Tua's just done for the year. Or if week 8 rolls around and the Dolphins have 2 wins, like, they're just probably not going to have Tua come back. It doesn't make sense to risk a player's life for nothing. So there's a lot of ways that you can think about that this goes poorly, and that's concerning. Like, I still think there's hope around Tyreek Hill. He's still a really good football player. Like, I would never bet against Tyreek Hill, but if they don't get Tua back until week 8, and let's say you're 0-3, I think you have to move on. Like, I do think Huntley's going to be serviceable, but Tyreek Hill's not going to have that upside that you would have with Tua. If you could get 2 wide receivers that have some nice upside, let's say you could get Garrett Wilson and George Pickens for Tyreek Hill, I would do that right away. Like, that's a trade that I would make. I like the upside of Wilson, obviously. We just talked about him, and I still really like George Pickens. You can still probably sell Tyreek Hill on his name value if an owner in your league still has hope that he can still be Tyreek Hill, which he still could be. Like, don't give away Tyreek Hill for free, but I'm really discouraged right now with everything that I'm seeing, and just a lot of the scenarios that I'm playing out are not in Tyreek Hill or even Jalen Waddle's favor. And like I said, if you have 0 wins on the season, you probably need to make a move now. And hopefully you can get good value in return for Hill before it's potentially too late. At number 6, Jaden Reed. Reed is one of the better buy lows in all of fantasy football right now. You need to get him on your team now. You need to get him on your team this week before Jordan Love likely returns in week 4. Jaden is the alpha in this Green Bay wide receiver room as he leads the team with the 21% target share. We know what he's capable of when Jordan Love is healthy. Just look at week 1, 4 catches, 138 yards, a touchdown. He had that 33 rushing yard score as well, 33 fantasy points. Reed is a really good wide receiver. He is going to break out this year as he's averaging 3+ yards per route run. He's in company with guys like Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, and Rashee Rice. Those are the only 3 guys that have a higher yards per route run right now. Just look at Reed's situation right now. He's on an elite offense, a really good ecosystem in Green Bay, a really good play caller, an ascending superstar quarterback in Jordan Love. Like, these are the guys that you bet on. And just looking at the situation, like these last couple of weeks, yeah, Reed hasn't had good games, but none of it was his fault. They went completely run heavy with Malik Willis under center. So buy low on Reed, and once Love returns, he is going to be a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. At number 5, Rashad White. It is not looking good for White owners. I'd be trying to sell right now before Bucky Irving steals even more work. White saw 38% of the rush attempts in week 3 compared to Bucky, who saw 56. Now, this could just be a product of the fact that White had that groin injury. Maybe they were easing him back into action. That could potentially be it. He could see a bigger role this week. I just don't think that that's the case because White just hasn't been good running the football. 2.1 yards per carry compared to Bucky Irving's 6.2 yards per carry. And if you are a Bucky owner, you are jumping for joy because you got a late round gem. The concern with White is that Bucky just continues to eat more into his role. Like, he's already taking away his rush attempts. Bucky Irving is also a good receiving back. So if he starts eating into Rashad White's pass down work, I mean, it's over for Rashad White if that happens. So I'd be trying to get out of the Rashad business now before Bucky Irving does even more, impresses even more. So I'd be trying to sell Rashad before Irving takes an even bigger piece of the pie, and then White is just like this pass down specialist and becomes a very boom bust player. At number 4, Brandon Aiyuk. Everyone out there, myself included, was expecting this blow up game in week 3 for Aiyuk with no CMC, no Kittle, no Deebo Samuel. But we all got tricked because it was the Jawan Jennings show who got all the touchdowns that we thought Aiyuk was going to get. A little bit disappointing there. Like, you expect the $120 million man to rise to the occasion, to go off for your fantasy team, and it just didn't happen. Aiyuk still looks a little rusty out there considering he held out the entire offseason, but I am still not worried in the slightest. Aiyuk still posted a 33% target share last week, and we know he's going to be a big piece of this passing offense moving forward. He also posted a 46.9% separation win rate in week 3, which was the best out of any wide receiver so far this year. So Brandon Aiyuk is still really good at football. They're going to need a lot of him because we don't know if Christian McCaffrey's ever going to play again this year. Deebo Samuel is always hurt, and I expect George Kittle to come back this week or next. But nonetheless, the San Francisco offense doesn't look like the powerhouse that it has in the past, and they're going to have to start feeding Aiyuk sooner rather than later if they want to start winning football games. At number 3, Anthony Richardson. This is tough. Like, the last 2 weeks, Richardson looks really bad. Like, some of those interceptions that he's been throwing, he's just air-mailing every single ball. Like, he's missing easy NFL throws that should be layups in this league. We didn't draft him in fantasy because we thought he was a good passer of the football. We drafted him in fantasy because of his rushing upside, which we saw in week 1. 27 fantasy points in week 1. But since then, he's had little success running the football and just, 6 interceptions on the year, 49% completion percentage. It's been rough. Like, those numbers still need to be a little bit higher for him to be a fantasy superstar that we all know and think he still can be because of his rushing ability. But if he's going to be a passer of that caliber, that's like Justin Fields last year, where it just wasn't good enough. Like, the Colts aren't sustaining drives. I think they have one of the lowest time of possessions in the league right now. So they're not moving the football. They're not scoring touchdowns. Like, it just looks really bad. Here's what I'll say. If you have Richardson on your roster, hopefully you have another quarterback on your team, or you can pick one up, because you probably need to bench Anthony for the foreseeable future. It's going to be really hard to trade away Richardson. No one's going to want him right now. I'm kind of taking the other angle of buying him low. Like, let's say your starting quarterback is Baker Mayfield or Geno Smith, or you're in a deeper league and you don't have a great quarterback. Try to buy Richardson for pennies right now because we know what he can still do. I still believe in the system. I still believe in Shane Steichen as a play caller. I think he's really good. There's talent on this offense. Or if you're a Justin Herbert owner who's now injured, try to buy low on Anthony Richardson. Not saying he's going to blow the league out of the water this upcoming week, but the upside is what you're chasing here. And if you can get him for cheap, there's just not much risk involved. So if you have him on your team, hopefully you have another option, because you probably shouldn't start him. I'm fine with riding the wave. If you just want to keep playing him, he's going to have those big games, right? They're coming. He's going to have those blow-up games. You're going to be excited he was on your team. So don't drop him or trade him away for nothing. But if you can buy him for nothing, do it. And if he's on your team, I'm fine starting him. But if you do have a serviceable option on your bench, maybe bench Richardson for a week, see what happens. I'm not terribly panicked, but I'm more so disappointed. You were expecting those rushing touchdowns, those big rushing games from Richardson that we just really haven't seen yet. At number 2, Mark Andrews. This one hurts. Mark Andrews was not on many of my draft boards this offseason, thankfully, because this is a disaster. This is 12.5 fantasy points through the first 3 weeks. And he gave you 0 fantasy points last week with one little pathetic target. Like, I'm worried. I'm worried because of the situation that Andrews is in, and that is the Ravens lost 3 starters on their offensive line this offseason, and now they don't have a good offensive line. So what are they doing? They're leaving the tight end, Mark Andrews, at the line to help block, to give Lamar more time to throw the ball. And that is not good if you're an Andrews owner because we don't get points for blocking. He played 20 snaps last week, and 6 of those 20 snaps were pass plays. 6. Like, Andrews ran 4 routes last week. 4. Like, I get it that they need help protecting Lamar, their franchise. They need help blocking, but Andrews is arguably your best receiver. I know he hasn't shown it yet this year, but if you want to be a team that needs to put up points, if you're trailing, you need to use Mark Andrews. Like, Zay Flowers is a nice player, but Mark Andrews is an elite tight end, and they're not using him. You also have to worry about Isaiah Likely taking away snaps from Andrews. It's just not good. There's nothing really to hang your hat on because Mark Andrews hasn't looked good this year. It looks like he's still recovering from that leg injury, from that hip drop tackle. They're not utilizing him. They're using him as a blocker. We're seeing a lot more Isaiah Likely, so there's just nothing that's great. There's nothing that you're happy about. And you spent a 5th-round pick on Andrews, you're upset. This is another tricky situation, though. It's a tight end. All the tight ends have been bad. So, like, you probably just have to bench Andrews at this point and hope there's a better guy on the wire. If not, you're just rolling with Mark Andrews. Unless you can package him in some sort of trade where you're getting a better tight end in return, but it's looking pretty bleak. I don't even want to recommend him as a buy low because I just don't see how this gets better. At number 1, Devonte Adams. This is what you signed up for when you drafted Adams in fantasy. He was a major fade for me because of what we're seeing right now, which is he's dealing with bad quarterback play, inconsistent quarterback play. He's on a bad, slow, uncreative offense. Like, Adams is going to have those splash games like he did in week 2 because he's Devonte Adams. He's still one of the best wide receivers in the game, but he's also going to have a lot of duds where this Raiders offense just doesn't get it going. They can't figure it out. He's going to have these 4 for 40, 0 touchdown performances, and it's going to be hard to predict when he goes off, when he has these big games. It's not a reliable fantasy option. It wasn't a good round 2 pick. If you somehow got him in round 3, like, still not a good pick just because of the inconsistencies, the bad environment that he's in. He's an older wide receiver with Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. Like, it's not good. So you likely have to hold him, wait for another one of those big games, and then I'd be selling high. And he also has to compete now for targets with Brock Bowers, who's looked really good so far this year. It's a tricky situation. I love Adams as a player. Like, if you want to ride it out and maybe hope he gets traded at the deadline, I totally understand that. If he goes to any other team, it's probably better than what it is right now in Vegas, but it's just not encouraging. Like, if you can sell him high just on his name value alone, his big week 2 game, if you can do that now, I'd do it, but you probably have to wait for another big performance and then try to sell him. And lastly, onto my biggest buy low right now in all of fantasy football. I almost put Garrett Wilson on this list, but I didn't. It's CeeDee Lamb for me. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, he's CeeDee Lamb. Like, you can't put him as a buy low. But the vibes in Dallas right now are off. Like, CeeDee Lamb is arguing with Dak on the sideline. Lamb hasn't looked that great himself. He's getting triple covered at times, double teamed. He's not getting open. He's the wide receiver 18 in fantasy right now. Like, you likely spent the 1st overall pick, or if you had the 2nd overall pick, on Lamb, and he's not returning that value right now. He ranks 109th out of 111th qualifiers in average separation with 1.9 yards. So I'm chalking that up to rusty, missed the entire offseason, didn't get a lot of practice reps in, probably nothing more than that. Jake Ferguson now returning from injury is actually a good thing for Lamb because they can't just focus on CeeDee. I think Jake Ferguson is a really good tight end. He's a threat in the passing game, and he's coming off a nice performance. So that's going to help Lamb. This defense also is not the same unit that they were last year under Dan Quinn. They don't look very good. So that's also good for CeeDee Lamb because they're going to be in a lot of shootouts where the Cowboys have to put up a lot of points, and they're not going to do that in the running game. And outside of Jake Ferguson, they have no one else but CeeDee Lamb. So you know the talent CeeDee Lamb has. Like, he was one of the best, if not the best player in all of fantasy last year. He's a top 5, top 3 NFL wide receiver. Dak Prescott's still a good quarterback. They're going to have to throw a lot to keep up if they want to win football games. So I went over to fantasycalc.com. I wanted to see trades that were going down right now for CeeDee Lamb. I saw a trade where someone gave up Olave and Stevenson to get Lamb. I would send my Chris Olave and Ramondre Stevenson away to get CeeDee Lamb in a heartbeat. I saw Alvin Kamara for CeeDee Lamb. I'd trade away Alvin Kamara right now for CeeDee Lamb. Alvin Kamara, older running back. Yeah, he had that 4-touchdown game, but he's still inefficient. The Saints' offensive line is banged up. Like, Alvin always seems to start out hot, and then he kind of cools down as the season progresses. Give me the younger, more talented player in CeeDee Lamb every single day of the week. It's going to be tough to buy low on CeeDee Lamb, but do it now before he goes off tonight, and then it's going to be impossible to trade for him. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you took away anything from this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will see you in the next one.